Hey guys, welcome back to the channel. If you don't know me, I'm Coach Taryn, founder of Different Breed, and today we're going to be talking through what you need to do when you get injured. What should you be thinking and what are the next steps?
Now stand aside, worthy adversary. 'Tis but a scratch.
And who am I to talk to you about injuries? Well, I myself have gone through some pretty major injuries. I had to get my elbow reconstructed at 16 where they told me it would never work again. Obviously, given my job and what I can do now, it works. I have worked with many clients on prepping for surgery, recovering after surgery. Actually, one of the directors of Different Breed, originally started off as my client, and we prepped her for surgery and recovered her post-surgery due to a full ACL tear. I've worked with people who've been injured, told they need surgery for their back, and have recovered them. And I just love training and shit. So I'm here to help you out. You know, you've gone to a training session, someone's done a move on you, you've heard a snap, crackle, or pop, you're in pain.
Hold on to that leg. Oh, beautiful.
What do you do? So number one is really simple. Don't catastrophize. I don't know how to spell catastrophize, so sorry if that's spelt wrong. Might be right. But don't catastrophize. We're going to put some exclamation marks. Look, even if you're really hurt, you are not going to know how bad it is or what's really wrong. I've really hurt myself before, been fine the next day, not felt anything, and had my shoulder crippled for a couple of weeks. When I had a tricep avulsion completely detached to my long head tricep, I thought it was fine. The pain was relatively low. It was only, a few days later when I realized I couldn't actually extend it anymore, we knew there was a problem. So this is really important because if you just freak out and assume the worst, it's just going to put you in a terrible mental state, which is the last thing you need when you've been injured. Basically, what you need to do is just get up, make sure you're okay and nothing's clearly broken. Obviously, you've snapped an arm, fucking go to the hospital, maybe catastrophize that. But if you don't know, you don't know. Just don't assume the worst. Get up, brush yourself off. If you can keep training around it, great. If you need to take the rest of the session off, fine. Just figure out what you need to do. Don't over worry about it. Then the next step is actually, I'm going to put it over here because we've got a big new whiteboard. The next step is don't stop training. And when I say don't stop training, I don't mean keep maxing out in your training session. If you need to take the session off, take the session off. But don't stop training the things you can keep training. You know, if you've hurt your hip, you can train your upper body. You may need to adapt what exercise you're doing, so you may no longer be doing a standing shoulder press, maybe you're doing a seated shoulder press. But it is very important you keep training. It's important for a huge number of reasons. Number one, just general health. If your body is in a better physical state, it will heal faster. Regular exercise is important for your mental health, your cardiovascular health. There is a lot of things still relying on your ability to move, so you shouldn't just stop moving for the sake of one injury. You just need to not be aggravating said injury. And there's actually a lot of evidence that training helps maintain muscle mass on injured body parts. So if I were to break my left leg, training my right leg would actually maintain the amount of muscle I have on my left leg. So there is also this protective quality of training across the body, so you can protect the injured side from as much muscle wastage by training as if you weren't. So don't stop training. But that is one of the biggest mistakes I see when people get injured. That is not what you should do straight away. You don't need to take a week off because your foot hurts. You just need to not hurt your foot anymore. Now, next step. This is going to happen between 1 and 3 days after the accident, and as you need to assess what functions are affected. And what we mean by that is not all functions are going to be equally affected by an injury. So the example I would take for this, I hurt my knee in a tricking session early this year. I damaged one of my lateral ligaments. I don't know if I strained it or tore it a little bit. It swelled up a lot. It was very unstable. So I imagine it was a light tear, but I didn't actually get it scanned or anything. So that's just my assumption. Point being, taking the example of my knee, I gave it a day. I just got myself up and walking. I kind of used it. I realized I was like, right, it's not stable, but I can walk around. And then day 2, I went into the gym and I tested, can I squat? Can I single leg squat? Can I hinge? Can I move laterally? And my squat was affected. My lateral movement was a little bit affected. Hinging wasn't affected at all. So I was like, cool, well, I can probably train my hinging relatively normally, as long as I don't feel pain. However, I need to regress my squats, and I need to regress my lateral movement. And this is really important for 2 reasons. Number one reason, know what you can still train. And number 2, know what you need to train. What we need to do is assess what functions are affected. So know what you can still train. You know, I was actually able to still train hinging pretty heavy. I just had to really bias the hips and it was absolutely fine. And I needed to improve my knee flexion ability again and my ability to squat and just general stability. And That's how you then figure out basically what your next steps are in your training. So you know you're going to train what you can and what isn't affected. You know what you can do even on that injured body part, and then you know what functions you need to regress to progress that body part. This is a much better way of thinking about it than thinking about like specific muscles and this and that, because the way an injury interacts with the whole area is it's so complicated. You can't like pinhole it down, but whilst you can't, your body can. Your body, given the right stimulus, will repair in the way it needs to and make the adjustments to your neurology and your physiology as it needs to. The way we do that is through progressive overload as we progress anything. So we simply need to find at what level is the body able to function without getting worse. Doesn't necessarily mean pain-free, but it means that it's not causing an exacerbation. And then we're able to train at that point and progressively overload back in the right direction. So we need to know what we can't do or what's been affected so we know what we're training and what level we can train it at. Now, the next step is somewhat linked to this. We're coming straight off this. Regress the functions, which we've just spoken through, then progressively overload. So yeah, regress the functions, then progressively overload. So from here, we know what we need to regress, we know what level we need to regress to. Then in our actual program, we regress that by, say, for example, taking a barbell squat back to an air squat. Maybe we take it to a hand-supported squat. Who knows? You just need to regress that function. Then we progressively overload that function till we get back to normal, which makes injury recovery sound really simple. Oh my God! Wow! It's not that simple though. There are caveats here that we now need to talk about.
What's wrong with you, bro? What the heck? You tripping, bro? You tripping?
So number one, you need continuous monitoring. Continuous monitoring. And the reason is the body is just going to react differently under different circumstances, and the injury is not going to progress linearly. So we aren't just going to go like whoop to recovery. It can look like this. You might dip real low, come up. It will zigzag its way up. So we need to essentially monitor what is going on with the injury in response to the training we're doing. And we want to think about that there's two big things I think about, and that's intensity and volume. So we want to think about what is the volume doing to the injury and what is the intensity of the regressive functions we're doing to the injury. For example, had an injured knee and we were doing 3 sets of 10 air squats. If I did that and the next day my knee felt fucked, I've probably done too much volume, too much intensity. Now, what you may find as an injury kind of gets towards the healing point, sort of right near the end, that you could do a heavy 3x5 and it feels absolutely fine. But when you go to do a heavy single, it just starts aching and that intensity point is just too much. So post-injury, you have this kind of effect to volume and intensity tolerance, and you just need to monitor that. A good rule of thumb is that your injured body part or thing you're trying to progress shouldn't feel like significantly more painful after doing training on it. It might be a bit more swollen or tender for a day or two, but it really should be no more for a day or two. And we should certainly see progression in the ability to perform that function. If you're not seeing progression and you're seeing an increased level of pain or just like a neutral stance, or worse, a regression and an increase of pain, then you really are probably pushing it too far and you need to take a step back, build back up, build back up, build back up. And then when you get to here, you may need to take a step back again. That's just how it goes. So you need to continuously monitor because you are not going to have a linear recovery. You are going to need to adapt what that regression is. You're going to need to assess these functions again and again and figure out what you can and what you can't do. And ideally, over time, you'll kind of figure out that dose-response relationship and you'll get better at doing that, but you need to figure it out. Now, the next thing is lifestyle. What do I mean by this? I mean that your body is significantly affected by your lifestyle. And that means during injury recovery, your injury is affected by your lifestyle. If you sleep like shit, the injury is going to take longer to heal. It might get a bit worse. It might flare up. If you're really stressed, the injury will take longer to heal. It might flare up. Conversely, if you're eating a really great diet, you're getting loads of sleep, you're super chilled out, it's going to heal faster. So whilst you can assess this and you can progressively overload and you can do a wicked program, if your lifestyle isn't in the right place, it's going to just not really go the way you want it to. So you're going to have to, and I guess as well, continuously monitor your lifestyle to ensure it aligns with what you need to recover the injury and to get your function back. And you just need to ensure that generally your lifestyle is in a pretty good place to see progress overall, so you can generally keep training, generally feel good, generally feel healthy. And then the final thing we need to think about is these things we're going to call acute and chronic phases. Really messed my writing up there. So to visualize this, we're just going to draw a graph quickly. So we're going to put ouch. So this is how bad the injury is, and we're going to put time. So at your initial ouch, it's a big ouch. That then heals, maybe it goes better over time, then you get a bit of an ouch again, and maybe it zooms up and it stays there for a little bit, then it drops right back down, you feel better. Then up, whoa, oh, but that wasn't long. This is essentially what's going to happen with your injury. The same way recovery isn't linear, your experience of this injury isn't going to be linear. So at the initiation, it really hurts and it hurts for a bit, and then it will slowly heal. You may spend a pretty significant period of time feeling like it's just kind of stagnant, getting better, and then you might shoot up to a big ouch. You might then stay there for a bit, and then you'll come down and you'll be back in these low-level phases. And essentially what we're seeing here are these acute and chronic phases. These acute phases are these sharp, big ouches. These chronic phases are these kind of longer periods of time where you just get to chill out and heal. And the reality is with any injury, it's going to go through this. As you can see, it's kind of trending towards a 0 down here. So really, then this might just drop off and tail off and you're recovered. But it will kind of spike its way up and down, and that's very normal. So whilst, again, we think that we do just kind of regress and progressively overload, we need to have this continuous monitoring of our lifestyle to ensure it aligns with what we need. So good sleep, good nutrition, the time to train, low stress. And we need to continually monitor the injury as we go through these acute and chronic phases, constantly reassessing how our functions are affected, figuring out what we can do, what we should be doing, and just how we can progressively overload back to normal. And really, that's the way you deal with all injuries. Now, there is sort of one step that could be slightly different here, where you're going to need a medical intervention first. So for my elbow, for example, I gave it a week, it wasn't healing, and then we figured out that that massive tricep avulsion happened. Well, actually, they left it for a month because the NHS is terrible, and I had like a little, it's a whole story, I won't go into it. But anyway, I had to have surgery before I could recover. But then the same process happens. I have surgery. They told me a lot of bad stuff about what could happen, but I needed to say, well, I can't catastrophize because I don't know what's going to happen for me. Then didn't stop training. I did all the other stuff I could still do, assessed what functions I could do, what functions I couldn't do, regressed, progressively overloaded back to having a relatively normal arm. So that's it really. You know, regardless of injury, this is the process you need to follow. You may have medical intervention up here. You'll know if you need medical intervention. And then you just follow this process until you're better. I'm just editing that video and I realized I didn't film an outro. So thanks for watching. Subscribe if you want more videos like that with bad spelling.